Joining us now is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Was her hand forced here, Senator? She had to get there before former President Trump?
Well, of course it was. I mean, 91 days ago, she was named as border czar in charge of the border crisis, and she demonstrated strong leadership by doing not a damn thing, by going nowhere near the border, by doing everything she could to hide from the crisis. Now, frankly, that's the same thing Joe Biden is doing. She's emulating the president in hiding from the crisis. And so suddenly President Trump is going to the border and they realized, oh, crap, we got to do something. But I got to say, even this announcement, so she announces that they're going to El Paso. El Paso is a lovely city. It is a beautiful place in Texas. It also doesn't happen to be the locus of the crisis.
No, that's
you
the Rio
look
Grande
at where
Valley.
the Rio Grande Valley is, and for folks who aren't from Texas, let me give you a sense. So El Paso is on the western tip of Texas. The Rio Grande Valley is almost on the southern tip of Texas. It's 800 miles away. To give you a sense of just how far they are, Chicago, Illinois is closer to Washington, D.C. than El Paso is to McAllen. And so she's going where the height of the problem isn't. Let me tell you what Kamala needs to do. Kamala, you need to go to the Rio Grande Valley. Kamala, you need to go to McAllen. Kamala, you need to go to the Donna tent facility, which is the tent city your administration has built that is massively over capacity, that has kids in cages. You need to look at the children in cages that you and Joe Biden put there in a way that is endangering their safety, is subjecting them to abuse and sexual assault. And there's a reason, John, she's not going to McAllen, not going to the Rio Grande Valley, because she doesn't want the cameras to see the Joe Biden cages with kids in cages.
I mean, there are a lot of people who say that she didn't want to go to the border and have that photograph or that video to be replayed again and again and again. But I mean, just in all fairness, the El Paso sector is where the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and a lot of Republicans went. They also went to the Arizona, the New Mexico sectors as well. So Republicans have been there, too, to that area of Texas.
Oh, sure. And listen, I've been to El Paso many, many times. El Paso is a wonderful, thriving border community. It's a very important community. And there are certainly real problems with illegal immigration in El Paso. But there's a reason she doesn't want the TV cameras to show hundreds upon hundreds and thousands upon thousands of children lying side by side by side. You remember a couple of months ago when I took 19 senators down to the border, and we went to that Donna tent facility. That tent facility was built to hold 1,000 people. With COVID restrictions, its capacity was 250. The day we were there were over 4,200 people packed in that facility with a 10% COVID positivity rate. Kamala Harris needs to look in the eyes of the children who are suffering because of Joe Biden's failed immigration policies. And when she looks in the eyes and realizes this isn't working, that's when they need to end catch and release, and they need to reinstate the Remain in Mexico international agreement that had solved this problem until Joe Biden and Kamala Harris screwed it up.
Senator, this is Jillian Turner along with John here in the D.C. Bureau. I'm curious to hear from you. Despite everything you just laid out, the criticism of, the fact that this is coming late, the criticism that she's going to El Paso rather than the Rio Grande, are you happy she's making this trip? It's something that you and your colleagues have been calling for months. One of your colleagues, Senator Cotton, just tweeted out reaction to the news. He says, complete mistake. Kamala Harris will find some way to make the crisis worse. So it sounds like now she's finally doing what you guys want her to do, but there's still a lot of unhappiness.
Oh, listen. Sure, I'm glad she's going to the border. She doesn't have any solutions. You ought to pause and ask. I mean, she's gotten a lot of grief over 91 days for not going to the border. Any rational person would say, well, gosh, if you're named in charge of the border, Jillian, tomorrow, if the president called and said Jillian is in charge of the border and the crisis there, I'm willing to bet within, 24, 48, maybe 72 hours, you'd get on a plane and fly down to the border. You'd say, all right, if I'm in charge of this thing, let me see what's going on.
Well, we'd have a lot of problems, Senator, if I was tasked with managing the border tomorrow. But I will say it's not just your Republican colleagues that have been unhappy with this delay. A lot of Americans who live along the border region that we've been talking to the last month at Fox News say they need help. They need her eyes on the ground or the president's eyes on the ground to understand, in addition to the Northern Triangle's underlying problems, Americans' underlying problems.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and we're seeing increased crime, increased violence, increased drugs. We're seeing this is a humanitarian disaster, and it's a public health disaster, it's a national security disaster, and the thing that's important to understand is this is man-made. That Joe Biden and Kamala Harris caused this when they reinstated the failed policy of catch and release, and when they ended Remain in Mexico. So Remain in Mexico was an international agreement that President Trump had negotiated with Mexico, where Mexico agreed that anyone who crossed illegally into Mexico, they would stay there in Mexico while their U.S. asylum case proceeded. And it ended up working incredibly well. Last year, in the year 2020, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. It was incredibly successful. When Joe Biden and Kamala Harris tore that international agreement to shreds, we went from the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years to today, the highest rate in over 20 years. We've already had 500,000 people come in illegally, and we're on pace for more than 2 million people in the first year of the Biden-Harris administration. It's their mistakes that are causing this, and they need to fix it. Look, the people of Texas are on the front lines paying the price, and the reason Kamala waited 91 days to go to the border is she knew if she went, TV cameras would come and they would document the human misery, the chaos and disaster that Biden and Harris are producing, and they don't have any answers because they've given the radical left a promise that they will not enforce the laws, they will not deport people, they will have open borders, and they're causing this suffering right now.
Senator, we should point out that former President Trump has just weighed in a statement saying, quote, after months of ignoring the crisis at the southern border, it is great that we got Kamala Harris to finally go and see the tremendous destruction and death that they've created, a direct result of Biden ending my very tough but fair border policies. Yep. Harris and Biden were given the strongest border in American history, and now it is by far the worst in American history. If Governor Abbott and I were not going to the border next week, she would have never gone. You don't have any expectation, do you, that the vice president will go visit the El Paso sector and say, oh, my goodness, what we're doing isn't working. We need to do something completely different?
No, to the contrary. I think what she's going to say is we need to turn the revolving door even faster, that as soon as we apprehend someone illegally, we need to let them go even more quickly. You know, the Biden-Harris administration is trying to ship illegal immigrants all over the country, and it's really stunning. You go down to the border and you see this caravan of people. It's not even that Border Patrol agents are apprehending them. They go seek out the Border Patrol agents. They turn themselves in because the Biden-Harris administration right now is the last mile of the human trafficking and human smuggling network, because the cartels get them just over the river, and then they find the administration because they'll ship them to wherever they want to go. And I think Kamala's only solution to that is let's process even faster, and the result is tragically going to be even more illegal immigration. The only answer is to enforce the laws and to move back to what we know was working just a few months ago, the Remain in Mexico policy, but their radical politics won't let them do that.
Senator, we know that you disagree with the Biden administration's border policy at the southern border writ large. We know that you're not happy with the situation on the ground inside of Texas or on the other side of the border in Mexico. But given reality as it is right now, today, what is the best possible messaging you could see the vice president deliver once she's over there? Is it along the lines of what she said last month when she said she told the Northern Triangle migrants to not come to the U.S., or is it something else?
Now, look, those were empty words when she said that in Guatemala. And in fact, you look, the president of Guatemala openly pointed out that Biden and Harris, their message to everyone was coming legally, the borders are open. And that's why you're seeing illegal immigrants crossing wearing Joe Biden T-shirts, because the message has come out that if you get here, you get to cross over illegally, and they're causing this. And look, they think it is compassionate.
Senator, sorry to interrupt you, but if you had the chance to determine or to advise the vice president on what to say on this trip, what is the message here? What is the best
Here's what
message?
Kamala Harris should say. We are reversing 3 decisions that Joe Biden and I made in the first week of the administration. Joe Biden halted construction of the border wall. We're resuming construction of the border wall. Joe Biden reinstated the failed policy of catch and release. We're ending catch and release. So if you get apprehended, we're not just going to let you go and let you stay in America. And number 3, Joe Biden ended the Remain in Mexico policy. That has proven to be an enormous mistake. We recognize it was a mistake, and so we're reinstating the Remain in Mexico policy, which produced the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. That's what she should say. The chances that she will say that are 0 because Biden and Harris have handed control of their immigration agenda over to the radical left, who don't want the laws enforced. They want open borders. They support open borders. And until Joe and Kamala are willing to change their policies, this chaos, this crisis will keep getting worse and worse. There'll be more violence, there'll be more murders, more cartels, and more drugs killing Americans across this country.
Senator, there's a lot of pressure on the White House right now, too, from progressives to rescind Title 42, which was enacted in May of 2020, which has resulted in 62% of the people that cross the border every month, including more than 100,000 in the month of May, to be sent back over the border. If this administration were to rescind Title 42, what do you think would happen?
The problem would get even worse. Title 42, at least during a pandemic, gave you the ability to exclude some adults. And early on, within the first weeks, Biden and Harris put a big exception to Title 42 that basically said, if you have a kid with you, you can stay. And what we started seeing, and the numbers have been exploding, as we started seeing these single adult males would show up with a kid. And by the way, when you DNA test the kids, a very significant percentage of the kids are not related to those adult males. The cartels are literally renting kids to illegal immigrants, and these kids are being horribly abused. That's the result of Biden and Harris's policy.
And that's something that we've covered. But if 62% of all of the border encounters during the month of May, and there was like 190,000 of those, were sent back over the border, if you were to rescind Title 42, do you expect that there would be a tidal wave of people who would try to get across the border?
I think that's exactly right, because that takes catch and release and it puts it on steroids. It makes then the policy of the Biden-Harris administration essentially whoever comes gets released. And let me tell you how backwards their policy is. So they're releasing hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens into this country, many of them without COVID tests, many of them from facilities where COVID is about 10% positivity. At the same time, Joe Biden just reinstituted the ban on legal immigration, on folks crossing the ports of entry in Texas to come to Texas, say to go shopping or to visit friends or family. People are coming legally. They've shut that down. They say that's non-essential. I got to say it's exactly backwards. They ought to open those ports of entry to legal immigrants, and they ought to stop releasing and encouraging illegal immigration. Biden and Harris get that totally backwards.
Senator, thanks for jumping in on short notice. Really appreciate it. Again, the big news that...
Hey everybody, this is Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Turning Point USA.